everybody. It's great to see so many people out tonight. I'm Laura Friedman. I'm a Glendale City Councilwoman. Hello. This is the second of two community meetings. We had one last Saturday, which was just as well attended. We had a very difficult situation with this fire, and we're anticipating possibly equally or even more difficult situation in the aftermath of the fire. And I wanted to just tell you a few things before I turn the meeting over to the experts. As a newly elected council person, I had the opportunity to watch the emergency operations center that the city put into motion when the fire began for several days up close. And that room was filled with people 24 hours a day, people representing every single department at the city, people who came in even when they didn't have to because they really wanted to be a part and they cared about the city. And I was extremely impressed with Glendale's response in that emergency. And I think a lot of you who were up here in the hills at that time saw how hard our firefighters and our police and the Red Cross and all of the volunteers and everybody worked. So give them a big round of applause. And since the fire, since our part of the fire ended, the preparations of the city have continued just as intensely. And there have been numerous meetings about the aftermath of the fire and what was going to happen as we head into the rainy season and what we were going to do to try to start to repair the forest and all of the damage that had been done up there. So the city is taking this very seriously, and there's been a number of meetings. City council's been briefed more than once. Talks are ongoing, and this is an evolution and a process. And I'm really glad that you're all here because it's important that we keep the lines of communications open with the community, with all of you, whether you live in Glendale, La Cañada, La Crescenta, or the county or the city of Los Angeles. We're all part of the Crescenta Valley. We are all neighbors, and we're all in this together. So I'm really glad that you're all here.
Just a couple of housekeeping items. I do want to thank, we all want to thank Reverend Beverly and Reverend Steve. Thank you very much for allowing us to use the facility. We have a brief presentation for you. If you'll bear with us, we'll go through the presentation and then we'll open up for questions. And I know many of you have a lot of questions. There are two components to this. Some of you may be interested in the park. Most of you may be interested in your residential properties and what may happen during a storm. So I'll turn that over to Steve, and Steve Zern, who's Director of Public Works, can answer any of those questions. Tonight's purpose is to review the post-fire conditions, storm and flood preparation that we all are embarking on, city and county contact information that we will provide for you. There will be some volunteer opportunities. We know that this community is very, very strong with volunteerism, and we want to provide that opportunity for anybody who wants to volunteer and help a neighbor. Long-term recovery, and finally, some questions and answers. Okay, as you know, as of September 21st, this is some of the data that we have. Approximately 180,000 acres have been burned, 94% containment. 37 cities surround the fire, and it is the 10th largest fire in California since 1933. As Councilwoman Freeman did say, we jumped on this right away. As soon as the fires were over, we understood that there may be a possibility of floods, mudslides, that type of thing. So the City of Glendale is collaborating with all of these agencies, the Unified School District, County of LA Parks Department, the Flood Control District, the California Department of Parks and Recreation, U.S. Geological Survey, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services, the Weather Service, the U.S. Forest Service, also AQMD, the Public Health Department. So all of those agencies are involved in this process. We mobilize a task force. We meet once a week, the bigger group. I have to tell you, subcommittees meet 2 or 3 times a week to deal with their various smaller sections and their tasks. The park conditions and closures, what we're dealing with is the park conditions and closures. Let you know it is not safe up there. So anybody who's interested, I know there are a lot of people interested in hiking up there. We have to keep the park closed right now because of the potential rock slides. Some of the trails are gone. The ash apparently is dangerous. The pH level is very high apparently from what we understand. So here's some of the conditions. If you see, the park is 700 plus acres. All of it's burned except for the area where the parking is and the barn. rock slides. This is a picture, go ahead. Again, one of the purposes why we are keeping it closed, there's a lot of truck traffic. The flood control folks are clearing out the debris basin, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. They're crossing that road in Duke-Majan to clear out the debris basin and make sure we don't have floods and mudslides. Again, the ash, rock, and debris is a real big problem for us at this point. Okay, you will see some staging and equipment. Public Works is staging equipment up there. If you drive up by Duke-Majan, you'll see K-rails. Steve has ordered hundreds of K-rails, I think, for this project. So we've jumped on it. We're ordering more. Again, the debris control devices are being checked by flood control, and they'll be working to clear those out. There will be some distribution of sandbags. We have, I think, 3,000 bags of sand full right now. We'll be filling more. There's going to be some opportunities for kids to help fill those sandbags. And again, we'll talk about volunteer opportunities later, but you may have neighbors who are maybe seniors who can't, bag or put bags down. If you can provide help in that area, let us know. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. We're also, we have some tours of the Duke-Majan Park. If you're interested, I think it's next Saturday and Sunday. We're going to walk people up there. Please sign up in the back, and we'll give you, I think it's October 10th and 11th? October 10th and 11th. Jeff and Russ will give you a little tour up there, up to the oak tree area where the burn actually started. And then we're just going to we're on a continuous emergency response mode. We're meeting weekly as things change. We're geared to be flexible and deal with it. Again, let you know, we're really proud of the team that we're working with. They are on top of it. We're all on top of it. Next, I think it's the Public Works.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll turn this over to Steve Zern.
Thanks, George. As you can see on our list, our main priority is reacting to what may come and protecting life and property, especially, and that's the mission of the Flood Control District, which you're going to hear about a little later, certainly our mission here in the city of Glendale. Back to that, I want you to know that what we're looking at, we have a lot of folks who have been involved in this. Aside from flood control in the city, we've hired our own private geological firm to give us, geotech firm to give us information. The USGS, the National Resource Conservation Service, all have been excellent in providing us information and advice on putting together what I call our initial plan for putting into place measures that we believe are going to help us get through the storm season. Again, a lot of what we're doing, flood control has their property that they're dealing with. The city's looking primarily at the public right-of-way where we can and have jurisdiction. We'll also be looking to the private property owners to assist not only each other, but themselves as well. This map here gives you an idea. The green area up here is the city of Glendale, this Duke-Majan Park. This sort of taupe-colored areas that you see here, that belongs to flood control. And as I said, they'll be taking care of that. We have a two-pronged approach that we're looking at in our preparation, equally important. One is what we can do within the park to keep the debris in the park, to slow the velocity, and that's also the mission where the flood control comes into, keeping as much as we can the debris into the flood control facilities. The second is, in the event that the water, the mud, and any debris gets outside of the park, what we can do to protect the properties that are adjacent to the park area. As I said, flood control, city park here. Then you have a number of homes, you can see up here in these areas and over here in the Quail Canyon area, where they are abutting these light areas with the red triangles. Those are all privately owned pieces of property. They're outside of the jurisdiction of any of the government agencies that are here. I have already sent a letter to each of the owners of these properties, letting them know of our concerns, letting them know that they have are very vulnerable in the event of heavy rains, not even heavy, moderate rains. That's what we're talking about here. And that we're encouraging them to take action to protect not only their property, but most importantly the downstream properties that sit below theirs. We will continue to make contact, try to make contact, and encourage these people to take some level of action. But at the end of the day, we're limited in what we can do to make them do something. We're also very limited in what we can do on private property. So it's imperative that the owners of the properties in some of these very vulnerable areas along Mark Ridge take precautions and take them now to protect your property. Flood control is an excellent source of advice and information to do that. The city will support them in any way we need to. Again, Chris Stone from Flood Control will be up here. I believe his staff is ready to start hitting the neighborhoods this week to begin offering advice. I encourage you to take advantage of that. In some cases, the advice may be to get more detailed, more technical advice from geotech or engineers. Again, anything you can do to protect your property and to help your neighbors is going to be very beneficial. George mentioned staging equipment. The Public Works corporate yard is at Chevy Chase and San Fernando Road, quite a ways from here. So what we've started to do is to create satellite facilities at Duke-Majan Park and the other one at the old New York substation. I know there's a couple people that got concerned seeing us at New York Sub, but rest assured that's an area where we're going to stage in the event of a storm. We've got material, we've got equipment. That'll be where we'll put our manpower to respond. You see here, these are K-rails. These are cement K-rails. We already have 2,000 lineal feet in place. We've purchased those within the last 2 weeks. Back here are stacks of what are called straw wattles. Again, these are erosion control devices. We've purchased a number of those. You see the equipment we're staging up here, so that'll be kept up here for response to any event we have. Sandbags, we've got 3,000 to date. We're filling them daily. We're going to need as many as we can get. So we'll begin to bring these sandbags were distributed up to Duke-Majan and to the New York station starting today. So by the end of this week, we'll have a pretty sufficient supply of bags up in this area to begin to put into place some of the measures that we need to do on the public right-of-way and that you will be getting advice from agencies if you so choose to. And again, I encourage you to do that for your own property. That's the end of my brief presentation. We'll be back to answer questions, but let me introduce Chris Stone from LA County Flood Control Public Works to go over their facilities.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for inviting us here tonight, and we're happy to share with you what we've been doing and what we will be doing over the next few weeks. But first of all, I wanted to kind of give you an overview of the area map, and I don't know how clear it is there, but anyway, this kind of depicts where the flood control devices are in your community. Primarily, you can see the lines going up and down the screen there. Those are where our flood control channels are. At the top of those flood control channels, you will see what appears to be some names. Those are really debris basins, and we have 7 of those in the city of Glendale. And the purpose of those debris basins is really to collect the debris that comes down and the sediment that comes off the burned watersheds, dewater it, let the water go through the outlet tower that you can see standing in the middle of that debris basin, and then let the water discharge downstream while keeping the sediment upstream. I want to mention that these debris basins are really something that have evolved over the years because of all the disasters that have occurred because of fires and followed up with mud flow events. That's the reason why all these debris basins exist. They have been sized what we think are appropriate to handle a burned watershed, but that doesn't mean that throughout a storm season you can have multiple rainfall events that can create a lot of runoff and it's likely that we would need to go into these debris basins and remove sediment and restore the capacity there to catch the sediment. One of the things that the city asked me to talk about is we have a lot of open channels, and again, these are the type of channels that lead from the debris basins down to the bigger systems that collect the water and get it on down to LA River, basically, is where it outlets into. And we will be investigating our channels to see if they have capacity. And they all have design capacity. What we'll be looking at is erosion going to be a problem, or sediment plugging these channels going to be a problem? My initial take is no, it's not going to be a problem. Talking about channels a little bit more before we move on, I know the city had asked about Vertigo Channel, which is a major collector from all these debris basins that come out of the city, and what kind of capacity it has. The design capacity on that was, it was designed to take a rainfall event from a burned watershed, because you have a burned watershed, you get more runoff. And it should handle a storm that has a 2% chance of happening in a year, and that means it has a lot of capacity. So we don't think that's going to be an issue with any of our channels. They have been highly engineered, and we feel like they'll provide adequate protection to the communities. Another area that we concentrate a lot of our efforts on is engineering advice. And at the top of this, the main reason for this picture here is there's a 1-800 number, 214-4020, where we encourage residents to contact the Flood Control District and ask for assistance to come out and evaluate homes to see if they're may be impacted by mud flows. In addition to that, we have engineering teams out in the field. Steve came to me and said, can you help us out? And we said yes, and in fact today we had 3 teams of engineers out visiting your city. We looked at both the station fire area and the freeway fire area. In the freeway fire, we already gave engineering advice to 7 homeowners. There's 2 or 3 others that we need to contact and get permission to get in the backyard and take a better look at it before we can make a determination of what, if anything, needs to be done. So we will be doing that here shortly as soon as we can get a hold of those homeowners. And then the other parts of the city, we've identified just on a rough reconnaissance that happened this afternoon, at least 27 homes that we think are at risk at this point. We have not contacted them yet, but expect them in your neighborhoods starting tomorrow. I want to let you know that if you see people, and again it would be LA County Public Works people, they will be wearing vests, bright orange or bright yellow. And on the back, you'll see the initials LA County DPW. So it'll say LACDPW. And so they should be easily recognizable. If you see them in your neighborhoods, that's what they're there for. If you have any questions about whether they're legitimate or not, don't hesitate to go up and ask them for their IDs, because they have been instructed to always carry a county ID with them at all times. They will be out in your neighborhoods. Typically what they do with engineering advice, they'll look at the burned watershed that would be tributary to a particular home and come up with some recommended measures on what the homeowner should be doing or can do to try to protect the mud flows from getting into the house and causing some problems. The other source of information that we have, again, the main purpose of this slide is the website address that's there at the top of the slide. And there's a lot of excellent information from our department relative to fires. It has our homeowner's guide, which we use for engineering advice. It has mud flow phase maps. It has fire history. It has all kinds of things on it. So I encourage you to go to that website and look what's there available. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the information that's available there on that site. This is kind of I wanted to give you some pictures of some of the typical homeowners advice that we would give. This was in the Kinalow fire, October 1993, where we advised the property owner to put a pipe and timber structure there to keep the mud flow from coming onto his property or into his house or into his garage. So that's a pretty good picture of the typical type of advice you may get from the Flood Control District. And another one, you saw the K-rails. We use this substantially in a lot of areas. Primarily we use K-rails in our advice to keep the flows on the street. Our typical engineering advice that you would see is really diverting the mud flows away from the house, not into your neighbors, but out onto the streets, and trying to keep it in the streets. So it's really critical in some situations where you need to work with your neighbors to make sure that everyone's adequately protected. And again, I encourage you to ask for advice if you think you need it, and make sure you're doing the right thing so that you're not impacting your neighbors. But anyway, the K-rails is a typical measure that you will see that we will recommend along the street rights of way, and that's really to contain the mud and the debris in the streets, and it makes it a little easier for the public works departments to come in and clean that up as opposed to trying to clean it out of people's houses and out of their yards and the other things. This is another typical type device that we build in water courses that are uncontrolled by debris basins, but yet they may directly impact a bunch of homes. This is what we call a rail and timber structure. Again, the flow would be coming from the side where the equipment is parked there. It would catch the debris in the water. The sediment would build up behind it and then allow the water to go through the boards and continue on downstream, but to remove the sediment. So we may or may not be building these type of measures yet. We're still investigating that. So. Let's see, fire disaster information. Okay, this is just another picture. What I wanted to talk to you about a little bit too is after we've finished our engineering advice to the cities, we put together what we call mud flow phase maps. And these phase maps are based upon where we predict the sediments will go based upon rainfall forecast. And we have 3 phases of maps. We have a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is just a typical example of a phase 1 map. This is in the Palos Verde area where they had a fire earlier this year, and maybe I can step up here and show you. But anyway, we've identified here where there's going to be problems with sediment on the streets with a phase 1 forecast. Phase 1 being the lowest level of mud flow forecast that we would issue. More significant events that obviously impact more roads to a greater extent and additional roads. So we will develop these maps. We'll give them to the city. They also will be available on our website. They're very important information we found out from some of the emergency response people. When there's a forecast of rain, we will issue a notice out to the city, to fire departments, sheriff stations, police departments, whoever would like it, to know what we're predicting for the upcoming rainfall event. And that helps them plan with how are they going to access particular sites if this rainfall event actually occurs as what's being predicted. So there may be intersections, there may be roads that are closed, and that will help them with their planning purposes. Let's see. I guess there's 4 thoughts that I would like to leave you with here tonight, and I think they're very important. One is the engineering advice that you get. If you get it, don't wait till it starts raining to implement it. I mean, I've seen it. I've been doing this for many, many years, and it never fails that the day it starts to sprinkle a little bit, people are scrambling around saying, well, where's the sandbags? Where do I get this? How do I get it implemented? Don't wait. Storm season is here as far as we're concerned. The other item I wanted to talk a little bit about is cleaning out of our debris basins. As I mentioned, they are of adequate size, we believe, for what's coming. But if you get a lot of rainfall events, back-to-back rainfall events, and we've all seen that, where you may have a series of storms coming in here with maybe a 3-day break between them, and you get a lot of runoff and sediment that could come into those basins. We will have patrols out during rainfall events that will be monitoring all of our facilities. If there's a facility that we believe needs to be cleaned out, as soon as we can get equipment up there to those facilities, they will begin doing that work. That could be the middle of the night. It could be on weekends. It could be whenever we get the clearance or the type of, so we can get in there, basically is what I'm trying to say. So as soon as we can get in there, we'll be in there. And just please be tolerant if you hear trucks running up and down your streets in the middle of the night, and even though you have to go to work the next day, please realize that it's up there protecting your community, protecting your neighbors, and please be a little bit tolerant with that, because that's why they're there. The other thing I would like to mention is throughout the storm season, just especially if you've been given engineering advice, I encourage you to stay in tune with what the weather forecasts are, to know what's coming. And if we start tracking weather in our office 4 or 5 days beforehand, where we get continual updates from the National Weather Service, and then we put out our mud flow forecasts and whatnot based on that. But just as a community and as residents, I encourage you to stay in tune with what the weather forecast is throughout the storm season. And the last thing I would like to mention is that Whatever measures are implemented this year, it's going to take, in our estimation, at least 4 to 5 years before the watershed recovers significantly to where you won't have the potential mud flow events that we're looking at here. So implement those measures if you've given them, and realize that they need to be in place for the next 4 or 5 years until this significant threat is reduced itself, and we can get back to life as normal anyway, as much as we can. So with that, I would like to introduce Bob Spencer. He introduced himself a little bit earlier. He wanted to talk about the CARE effort that's going on. It's a coordinated agency recovery effort, and he has a few words to say on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Once again, good evening, and I appreciate just the opportunity to talk to you for a couple of minutes about CARE and what its role and function is. One of the criticisms that was leveled at agencies during the fires itself was once again, sort of lack of or uncoordinated communication around when you get a lot of agencies working together, and we've all got PIOs. It's very difficult sometimes unless they actually organize what's known as a Joint Information Center, or a JIC, and you have all of these agencies sort of gathering information as best they can and disseminating it to you as best they can also. So under Supervisor Antonovich, we had spoken with him about that, and we decided to get a head start on this winter and actually get a coordinated communications and public outreach program going. And that's what CARE is all about. CARE actually stands for Coordinated Agency Recovery Effort. Some of the organizations or some of the agencies that are already with us include the U.S. Forest Service. We've got with us also the U.S. Geological Survey. If anybody knows Dr. Lucy Jones, every time we have an earthquake, Dr. Jones is in there as well. So we've got her with us. The NEMO, the National Incident Management Organization, Natural Resources Conservation Service, Caltrans. The City of Los Angeles is coming on board with us. We've got the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've also been approached by LA County Fire and LA County Sheriffs, who all want to send their PIOs to this group so that we can, as much as possible, coordinate outreach to you, because it's very vital. The role of CARE actually is twofold. One, it's to keep the communities all the way around the forest up to date with information about road openings and subsequently road closures. There are some what we're calling soft openings on right now. On the weekend, we reopened the Angeles Forest Highway, or portions of it, and Big Tahunga Canyon, basically to now enable homeowners up in some communities way up there in Singing Springs, Hidden Springs, who lost their homes, but they needed to get up there to sift through what was left and bring, whatever they could salvage, bring it out. The problem was that we weren't letting them in, but the scavengers were managing to get in and coming down with truckloads of stuff. So that's open right now. It is not open to through traffic. It's very dangerous. In fact, there is no guardrail. All the guardrail is gone. We've lost miles and miles of guardrail. Our crews put 1,400 cones all the way along the edge. We're treating it as a construction zone. It's strictly a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. But in the event of any sign of a storm coming our way, those roads will be closed down completely to anybody but emergency services. So there'll be, for anyone who needs to get up there, and trust me, if you haven't been up there, there's nothing up there right now. It looks like they call it moonscaped, and that's exactly what it looks like. It's pretty desolate. So if you don't have a need to stay up on the hill, we'd suggest you stay down here. The other thing that we want to do, as Chris has been saying and Steve has been saying, is educate you about preparing for potential mudslides, because we know they're going to come, and you need to be ready for them. So that's what we hope to create with this communication system. I want to point out to you that in the event of another emergency, if there is a major incident that takes place up there, the role of communications will revert back to the emergency agency that's managing that situation. CARE is not set up for that. We don't have any legal authority to order evacuations ourselves. The fire department and police will do that, and their communications team will take the lead role in communicating. But we hope by creating the network that we're doing through CARE that we will actually become a resource for those emergency services to use. We're also, and spoke with Rich earlier, going to meet with him, we're bringing on city PIOs, community PIOs to join us in this effort, because the more outlets that we can identify for communications, the better off we're going to be. I've only been with the county for 3 months. I came out of a city environment myself, so I'm well used to working with city newsletters and city cable TV channels, local community newspapers, and these are the kinds of organizations that right now are not plugged into our mainstream when we put media releases out usually. So that's the kind of network that we want to build. We'll be able to provide for you a number of resources. We will have regular media alerts and updates on road closures and any other issues that are going up there. We have a ton of educational materials and articles about preparing for floods and potential mudslides. We're also creating a speakers bureau, just like this, for community meetings. And for your cable TV channels, we've got informational videos, we've got bulletins, and we're producing a series of public service announcements right now. One of the things that I want to mention, and we're moving so quickly on this that we haven't even been able to update Chris, the information that you saw about our website here, we're completely revamping our website. And when you go on to the County Public Works website, as of, they tell me, noon tomorrow, there will be a great big link to CARE. You will see it. It will hit you in the face as the web page comes up. And what we're doing is we're putting all of the information that you could possibly need for anything under that one link, so that you can, it'll be one-stop shopping, we hope. As a result of this also, we've actually talked the department into getting into things like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, which some of my youngest staff members are going to do that because I don't even know what Twitter means. So, but a lot of people do. So we're actually going to utilize that technology as well to get the message out. There's also a great system that was on one of the slides, and you will see it if you visit the county website. It's called e-Notify. And we strongly recommend that you sign up for that. It's free. Just go onto the county website and on Public Works website, I beg your pardon. Look for the e-Notify. It's a big envelope. And just click on that. You can register to get messages either on your home computer or on your cell phone. And that is updated 24 hours a day, and you can pick and choose. There's about 16 categories that you can get alerts for. The ones we're pushing right now are the mudslide information, the weather information, and the road closures. So we're here to, as I said, help you and help Rich and get the word out to you, and we urge you to look at your city communications, watch your city TV channel, not just the mainstream stuff, because this is where we're going to get the information out to you. And I'll be around after the meeting too. Thank you.
Just a couple of things I wanted to follow up on coming outside of Chris's presentation there. Some of the things that you're going to begin to see in your neighborhoods from both. Chris talked about what the county's doing. I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing. First of all, as I mentioned, there's a number of agencies that have looked at the area and put together plans, including our staff and our outside geotech staff. By the end of this week, we hope to have pulled that all together and have a single plan of which we're going to begin to implement. Hopefully begin to implement that as soon as next week. In the meantime, some things that you can expect to see. There are going to be some changes in your neighborhoods. There's going to be some aesthetics that you know, and some minor inconveniences. We hope to keep them minor, all in preparation for the impending storm season. K-rails, I showed you pictures of those. We may begin placing those as soon as the end of the week in different strategic locations. They're big, they're bulky, they're difficult to move. We want to make sure we have them near to where we need to put them in place. I think Chris mentioned, I apologize I had to step out, but I'm sure he mentioned trying to keep the debris in manageable areas. The streets are a prime area for us to keep the debris in, keep the water flowing down the street, use our catch basin and storm drain conveyance system. Streets are easier to clean up, allows us to get the debris there, get it up, get it out of the way, and reopen the streets. So all the way from Pennsylvania, New York, Dunsmore, Frederick, these streets are streets that we're going to be looking at and keying into. Especially those areas that are between the frontage of the park, that the entrance of the main park entrance. Then to the west, you have the flood control entrance, which almost lines up with Dunsmore. So we want to go down those streets, channel the debris and the mud flow down that way. But obviously, there's a lot of low-lying houses along those paths that we need to look at, put measures in place in the right-of-way so that we can protect it, keep the water flowing down the street where we can better manage it. This is not the last time we're going to give everyone an opportunity to come and talk and listen. We're in the beginning stages. Obviously, this is extremely serious to us. We're thinking worst-case scenario. It's the only way we really can operate. But once we have a more definitive plan, I'm going to say probably, looking at George, but maybe in the 2 to 3 week area, to have another public meeting to give you an update. As you begin to see some things happen in the streets, you may begin to see different trucks and people rolling out, somebody coming up to your door, asking you if you need assistance. We want to be able to come back and give you an update. We are shooting to have a majority of our infrastructure and protective measures in place by October 15th. It's not very far away. October 15th is the traditional beginning of the flood control season. While the rains aren't predicted till sometime in November, we want to get the jump. We may need to be doing some tweaking and some adjusting as we move towards the wetter part of the season, but we want to be primarily ready to be able to address things by the middle of October. So again, some of the streets, we may alter some of the on-street parking. Individuals where we see your house, you may sit low, your driveway may sit low, your driveway may be low and lead right into your house. We may be talking to you about the potential of how we're going to block your driveway during a major storm to keep the water from going in there. Again, same time, hopefully you're talking to the flood control people about measures you can take on your own property. Briefly, George mentioned the ash situation. Folks that are here from the Forest Service can talk a lot more intelligently about that particular issue. But we're entering the Santa Ana wind season, so the winds will be here before the rain is, and there's a lot of ash up there. It is very caustic. It has a very high pH content. It can be an irritant to your lungs. It can be harmful to your plants. So we're asking you to take precautions during windy situations. We are establishing a link with the Air Quality Management District so that all of our websites will have up-to-date information on what the weather and what the air quality situation is for a particular day. We'll have suggestions on masks for those that have very sensitive respiratory systems. We're working with the school district as to how they're going to handle the kids. So we can pass that information. The school district is part of our task force. So they'll be hopefully getting information back to the parents. My sense is that they'll keep the kids in and during these events. So they are monitoring, have been monitoring the air quality, I believe, since the fire, and continue to do that. So we're going to try to get as much information on that particular issue as well. Because, again, having been up in the back of that park, there's a lot of ash. Many of you, last week, Monday or Tuesday, wasn't even winds in Glendale. It was actually being generated from outside, but you saw the ash start to spread, and we had reports it was down as far as mid-Glendale. So you can imagine if we get some heavy Santa Anas, we're going to have that blowing around. Nobody's here from the water department, but an obvious question comes up about how do I clean up my yard? Do I get the ash down? We've been told you should wash it off of your vegetation. We'll have some information on our website about that. The water department is working to have the ability to allow individuals to keep their houses safe by washing this down, even during the conservation effort and the various conservation mandates that have been put in place. But some relief to allow you to use water to get the ash off your property, to get it off of your vegetation. So within probably the next few days, you should have some more information on that. Yeah, you saw, I think, Chris mentioned, if you go back, we had that 2-year calendar, skipped ahead. Chris mentioned a 5-year period, and that's based on our experience from the 2002 mountain fire that affected Bram Park. It was easily 3 years. We were on storm alert for 3 years. That 4th year, we saw the vegetation come back and sort of come back to some sense of normalcy. But we will be back next year for sure, doing these same kind of things, probably the year after that, and then we'll monitor it from that point to see how well the vegetation in the parks come back, not just the park, the entire forest. So we're in for a while. We're in for the long haul. Many of you have been up here for a while. If you've been here as long as 78, you've been through this before. So we want to make sure that we don't underestimate anything. Public information methods, these community meetings, of which we will have more. We're going to try to keep you as posted as possible. We have a city website. Each of the departments, fire, public works, parks, has websites with specific links to storm preparation. We reference all of the flood control, Forest Service, USGS, NRCS. Question came up in our last meeting about national flood insurance. So we've got some more information about that. That's on our website. Also, don't hesitate to call Congressman Schiff's office because they're prepared to help answer those questions as well. Email notification and our emergency mass notification system. Those will all be fine-tuned and ready. One thing I should mention, there's no question that if we get enough rain, and believe me, just to be very honest with you, it's not going to take a lot. USGS has told us 1.5 inches in a 3-hour incident could have a severe impact on this area. That's not a lot of rain. It's not a big incident. So we are going to develop evacuation plans for certain areas of the neighborhoods, and those will be based on working with fire and police, looking at some of the triggers that USGS and National Weather Service have indicated to us, the amount of rain, the intensity of the rain, the particular area and proximity to the park. We hope to have those probably, we meet this week to try to nail it down. By early next week, we should have those, at least an idea, so that you can see where some of the worst severity is. And I'll tell you, USGS ranks these areas on a scale of low to severe. About 95% or better of the Glendale area is in a severe zone. So again, this is very serious, very, very serious. It's the way we're taking it, and we're begging you to take the same type of attitude. So we will have those evacuation plans out early enough so you can begin to identify if you start to see if we get a weather forecast, you start to see things. It's easy to put triggers in place and predict weather. Flood control, I believe, talked about the spotters and the people they'll have on site at all times. We, too, will have staff out patrolling the area, making sure our flood conveyance system or our storm conveyance system is operating, looking into the park, checking to see if there's any anomalies or anything that's changed, and we'd be ready to make that call if need be to evacuate in order to make sure that we're taking care of the lives of our citizens. Cable television channel 6 has been and will continue to run spots, information. We've got, a couple years ago, our building official, Stuart Tom, put together a storm preparation DVD, so we're running that constantly. We have copies here, I believe. If not, we'll get those for you. We can make those as many as you need. It's a great primer. It probably goes pretty well with the very nice package that Flood Control hands out to the folks that teaching you how to weatherproof your house, how to place sandbags, protect your assets. Newspaper press releases, will continue to work with the news press to disseminate information that way. Notice to community groups. We'll use all of the various groups in the area to disseminate information that we can. If that means church groups, social clubs, homeowners associations. I'm available, as are my staff and any other staff, to come if you want a smaller group. If you have, 4, 5, 6 residents in a particular area that want to get together and talk about their specific issues, I'm more than willing to do that anytime. Please just call me. We'll come out. We'll talk to you in more specifics about your neighborhood, your house, your area. So we're available to do that as well. And of course, we'll continue to post on our website, as I mentioned, the various departments in the main city website. Very fluid, very much an operation that we freshen on a daily, if not more than once a day, to continue to update the information, put more and more contact as we get that, as we hear back from folks who want more information of a certain type, putting that on there. We have a direct connection with the National Weather Service, so we're working now with the fire department to get a notification through Verdugo Dispatch and then to our staff, which then we can get out to the public. So Volunteer activities. We want to, for everybody, as again, I've said it many times, is for property owners to look at their property and take whatever measures they can to protect their property. This is a real situation where, you know, a neighborly, helping out your neighbors, whether they be elderly or disabled, that we can offer them assistance. But also, you got situations where you may do something on your property, it may be good for you, but it may not be so good for your neighbor. So we're encouraging that neighbors and communities work together on putting in some of the mitigation measures. Sandbag distribution and placement. Again, flood control has great advice on that. We have advice on that. We are filling sandbags as we speak, but we're also planning to have some what I call sandbag parties up here, where we can get together. Crescenta Valley High School students have been pointed out as a group that needs community service hours. The Boy Scouts. We're working with the CERT program in the fire department, and any other group, the historic folks, any other group that wants to, or just an individual wants to, come out and help us fill sandbags. We may start that as soon as this week, but probably next week. Saturday Dunsmore, our first sandbag filling party. So we'll get some more information about that out tomorrow on specifics. Depending on the weather, we may want to try to get it done in the morning, get an opportunity to do that, but we'll put the bags up there, we'll put the sand up there, we'll have staff to assist, and gosh, as many bags as you can fill, we're appreciative of that, because those will all go back into your community, all back into your houses, possibly. Community cleanup, we've had requests from folks, can we be involved in actually cleaning up in the during or after an event, and absolutely we've done that before. We have a process to go through. We'll do that through your office, George, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, folks who want to volunteer. This is our phone number, and this is for parks, for volunteers, the phone number there, and then the email address as well. We have this posted on all of our or the parks website especially. We'll get it on the city website as well. If you miss it here, don't worry, you can get it in another place. This is just a list of our contact information. Again, this is all on the website. A lot of this, we've got our specific hotline number for this particular issue, the storm preparation, and then the various departments in the city, and then, of course, Los Angeles County Public Works Flood Control number as well. Again, we have this in many different places. So website, we've got it on printed material. You know, you call the city, you call Public Works, we'll get you any of these numbers that you need. I did want to mention, this came up last meeting we had, and that had to do with a question about some folks doing some door-to-door sales, if you will, taking advantage of the situation, maybe to wash your house down or to offer some level of service, asking to get in your house or look in your yard. There was some concern that this may be a ploy, and certainly could be. As we said, you know, if you're very concerned, if it's an aggressive individual, you're very concerned, the police department would be your call to come up and look at that. Otherwise, county public works employees, city of Glendale public works employees, you won't be able to miss them. They will be festooned in orange and logos, name tags, trucks. We have some trucks that are unmarked, but most of our work trucks all have distinct either City of Glendale Public Works logo or County Public Works logos. Most of my people have no business asking to go in the backyard. Flood control folks may knock on your door, may ask your permission. Neither one of us will ever go into your yard without your permission. We may look over a fence in case you're not home, just to try to get an eyeball view. But you know, when we come up to see you, we won't ask you for that. It's for the express purpose of trying to help you out. If you're in doubt, for any reason you have a question, don't hesitate to say no. Just say no. Say no and call me. Call the Public Works Department, and I'll verify who's out there, who's working, if it's legitimate or not. You won't hurt our feelings. If it is us and it just happens to be you're not comfortable, you say no, you won't hurt our feelings. We'll come right back and help you. Also, as flood control goes through, we've identified areas that are most vulnerable or the first line of vulnerability, some of the houses and homes along Mark Ridge, Quail Canyon, up on Boston, the Arnell cul-de-sac. So those are some of the first houses that are going to get that knock on the door. But if you feel that somehow we passed you by, we missed you, you want to talk to us, by all means, call us. Either county or us, we'll be there, we'll talk to you, we'll give you whatever advice and information that we can. There's not enough information to provide you, and we're going to be out there doing whatever we can. So, with that, Ms. Friedman would like to make a few comments.
Just very quickly before we go to questions, this is a very challenging situation. But I feel confident that with all of the efforts that are being taken by all of these different agencies, that we're really going to do a lot to mitigate any type of damage to property and to the neighborhood. But I also know this neighborhood well enough to know, and from the emails that I've gotten, that a lot of you want to know more about what you can do to help than the other way around. So I know that with this community, that whatever comes, we'll get through it together. And I know that you'll be watching out for your neighbors, as well as trying to be the eyes and the ears for us. And I just want to reinforce that if you have any questions about anything, not to hesitate to contact any of us. And if you can't get through to a person that you think is helping, please feel free to email me or phone me directly. It's not a problem. I'll make sure that your question or your concern gets to the right person. And something else I'd suggest in terms of working with your neighbors, that if you're unclear what your block should do or your area should do, and if you're not sure that if what you're doing is going to hurt someone else in your area, we can set up a meeting just for your block or just for your little area so that we can come up, Public Works can come up and look at your block and come up with a plan to help you institute mitigation that will help the whole block and not hurt just one person at the bottom of the street or anything like that. So if you're not sure, or if you start to get into arguments over what you should do, call us in, we'll sit down, we'll have a small meeting with your group and come up with a plan just tailored for your area. So I want to thank you all. I'm so glad to see you all here tonight. Again, don't be afraid to contact any of us. We're here to help, and we'll all get through this together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to question period now.
We're all here at your, yes ma'am. We have a microphone right there.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Erickson with the Crescenda Valley Town Council. We are next-door neighbors, and I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be having a meeting similar to this at Rosemont Middle School on Tuesday, October 6th, when we'll find out what the county is going to do. And then if you're interested in knowing what the flood was like in '78, on Monday, October 19th, the Historical Society, right here in this building at 7 o'clock, will have movies and recollections of the '78 flood to let you know what it looked like in case you weren't here for that great experience. Thank you. And one question I asked at the CARE meeting, and people are asking me, why aren't we reseeding? Why aren't we replanting trees? And I think I was told it's not a good idea, but some people are still confused on that.
There's a couple different schools of thought. One of the things is we're pretty late into the season, and if we were going to be looking at anything, it would be the hydro mulch option. If we were to lay seed, there's a lot of issues with invasive species and that kind of thing, but plain and simply, there's not enough time for it to take before it would wash away. Our geotech, the private firm MacTech that I mentioned earlier, that was going to look at the issue for us from their perspective, has identified some potential areas where hydromulch could be effective. It all depends. They used it in the Griffith Park fire, for instance, and they felt it was fairly successful, but as we pointed out to them, it was a drought. They had little or no rain, so they didn't have the risk of it washing away. They used it in San Diego after one of the major fires down there. It didn't work at all. So a lot of folks, again, the Forest Service would know better and is more of an expertise in that area. A lot of the time is the natural vegetation coming back because the root systems for the most part are still intact, and we get just enough rain to have growth of those plants, and then hopefully that will take care of it. George, yes.
And if I can add, there will be an opportunity to renovate the park in terms of not reseeding, but replanting and then taking out non-native vegetation. So there's going to be some opportunities for people to work on the park itself. But reseeding at this point is not a good idea.
I can tell you from first-hand knowledge, I lived in the Kinaloa fire. I went through that. And fire department came out, and they had helicopters, about 15 choppers going all day, seeding all the mountains up there by Wilson, Henry Flats in that area. And they got, just as they got finished, it hit a Santa Ana wind, and it blew all the seed. We had grass growing on our roofs, on the tops of our chimneys, the top of the phone poles. That's the first rain. So you put a lot of effort into it.
Can you tell us if the privately owned land is owned by individuals or companies?
We have the names of all. We identified all of the red triangled areas. The majority of it, well, let's go. Up at the Sky Ridge development, those 3 triangles there are owned by the Homeowners Association. So they actually own that. Then as you move east, most of that is private parties until you get over on the eastern side of the park. The Ashrama Retreat Facility owns, I believe, 2 or 3, all of them, on that side. And we're meeting with them because not only do they have issues with the private property, but their retreat development also is in probably the most dangerous area that we see at this point. So we have a meeting with them this week, I believe. We're trying to get flood control there as well to help them develop a plan for their facility. They have structures that are in danger, but not only that, as the water blows through that facility, it comes right back out down here and could infiltrate the neighborhood. So on that side, we're pretty fortunate that they're the owners of those properties, and they have been to this point very willing to help and cooperate. Obviously, the Homeowners Association is very willing. So our focus is kind of on those 2 or 3 properties that are wedged in between the Skyridge development and the park. We've sent 1 letter to them last week. I will send another letter this week. We have phone numbers, so we're going to try to get a hold of them. We will be vigilant in trying to get them to do the right thing and come out and take some measures.
How do we figure out how much the city is going to do for our properties and how much we have to do?
Well, and again, something I alluded to, our primary objective is to look at those areas in the public right-of-way of which we're responsible for. There's a lot of different issues involved in going on private property. Your best bet, our best bet for our residents, is the service that the county provides. We talked to the NRCS, which is a national agency. They said, you are lucky that you live in this county. This is one of the few flood control districts that will go to the lengths that they will to offer assistance to houses. When it comes down to actually installing things, that becomes a very sticky wicket, and chances are you won't see either of us entering private property to install protection measures. But right up to the point of telling you where the supplies are, telling you what kind of supplies to use, where to put it. The county in their package has a sketch sheet that they'll actually sit at your house and sketch something out for you. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Chris, but you don't know how lucky you are. This is an excellent organization who goes to great lengths to help the private citizen, and I, again, implore you to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, if you remember one of those mud flow devices, I call it a rail and timber structure. It was a pretty massive structure. Those are the type of measures that we will implement on private property. But we cannot go onto private property without the approval of the property owner, and typically that means that we'll need an access permit from them and the ability to maintain that measure for the next 4 or 5 years, and then at that point we would come back and take it out. But those are the type of devices that we will implement on private property, and we do partner with NRCS in implementing that. So they are definitely a good funding partnership with us. So.
Again, that's a huge benefit. Yes, ma'am.
I'm concerned about the reseeding of our hill. I guess our slopes. I'm hearing from you that you don't want to do the hydro seeding, and that we're going to try to let the non-native, the native species come back. And I would want to reinforce that. I don't want to spray a bunch of grass up there if that's not what belongs in our area.
That we agree with you.
I just sort of have a silly practical question for those of
No silly questions.
On Mark Ridge, you're going to be putting the K rails on Mark Ridge, I'm assuming?
More than likely, yes.
Okay. Will we have some kind of meeting so we'll know where they'll be placed, like for trash pickups, helping our elderly neighbors bring in groceries, that type of thing?
Absolutely. What you're probably going to see first is us just setting them out, not blocking driveways, trying to keep them in areas like if we can get them up out of the street at all, we can put them down. Then as we come to the point where we're ready to get the specific placement plan, to talk to you about your house, to say, look, if it starts raining and we get, start to think that we're going to get that inch to 2 inches of rain, we're going to block your driveway.
That's fine.
We're going to block your neighbor's driveway. Trash pickup.
Block us all.
Trash pickup, don't worry. That's my responsibility. We'll make sure the trash gets picked up.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of experience working in construction areas on that anyway. Trash collection guys are just excellent there. Any situation where you have neighbors that have special needs, again, that's something we put up there. To have the neighborhood come together to help those that are disabled or elderly would be great. If there's issues with their cans and trash and those things, we'll help where we can. But we will, as I said, be back to you maybe in 2 to 3 weeks with a more specific implementation plan. And then, as Councilmember Friedman said, if you want to talk more specific about your area, 2, 3 homes, half a dozen. I have a meeting set up for next Thursday in Quail Canyon already with 14 homes. They want to talk specifically about their particular neighborhood. That's done. We'll be there. Flood control will be there with us. If you want to talk about just you and your neighbor, happy to do that. Not a problem. I think that we have this lady first in this row. We're just going to keep passing that down the row.
About 40 years ago, when I first moved into my home, the fire department had us clear the drains behind our house.
Yes.
And they no longer do that. Is that going to be implemented again?
Well, if it's your private property drain, you're always required. That's your responsibility to keep that clean and clear. Wherever we have public drains that are in hillside areas, that's our responsibility. Mr. Hargrove in the back, he and his staff keep those clean, along with the storm drain conveyance system.
We do it ourselves, but they no longer tell us that we have to do that. I keep mine clean, but none of the other neighbors have, and they've grown, dirt and plants and vines and...
I've been here over 20 years, and to my knowledge, we've never had an annual reminder about that. It's your drain, it's on your property, and it's in your best interest to keep that clear regardless of a fire or no fire. As I've said before, looking back at this, we don't need a burn area to experience some pretty significant impacts from extensive rains. So anything you can do in that manner to keep your drains clear, we highly recommend you do that. We do that in the public right away. You should do that. I'll tell you what, we'll put that in part of our storm program advice on all of our websites because it's a good idea. We'll just remind them.
It's going to be flooded and the rest of it because it'll stop there.
We'll put that out on our webpage. Mr. Galanian, the city engineer, sends about, 40, 50, 75 letters a year out to various what we call hot spots, either grading permits that are under or hillside areas where we know there have been issues in the past, including areas where we know they have private property drainage that we ask them to clear that. We'll go ahead and plaster that on our website as well. Very good idea. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, sir.
I don't think I need that.
It's for TV.
I'm Mark Rich, too. I'm a neighbor of hers. And I just would like to know if I can get some of the sandbags this Saturday at Dunsmore and then just put them there along my driveway going 90 degrees from the street. And then when it's necessary, I can just put them right up there in the driveway and help block it.
Yeah, well, we have sandbags now, and hopefully by the end of the week, you don't even have to wait for the sandbagging event. We're hoping that, again, those areas we want to focus on first, and Mark Ridge is one of them, at least that first row of houses outside the park, is we have bags at New York and bags up at Duke Majan, so we'll lay those out there. We'll take a look. We like to kind of work with you a little bit. We want to make sure that, again, that you're not going to do something that we're going to end up doing something else and end up exacerbating your problem. So we gladly deliver those to you, as many as you need, and then look at your situation, especially as it's out in the front area, because we'll be in the streets. So absolutely, though. Yes, sir.
I understand that this fire was very stationary because there was no wind and burned very hot. And perhaps, that destroyed the seeds of even the species of plants that need the fire, like a manzanita. So my concern is flash floods. We have a lot of vertical walls here, there are a lot of canyons. And for the Forest Service back there, I wonder if they're worried, like I am, about flash floods from the high-end mountains.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's kind of a two-part question you have there, and the Forest Service would know better than I. You're right. The fire had little or no wind. It burned extremely hot. We can tell by the levels of ash. I'm encroaching over into Vince's territory. Details of the fire. It burned pretty thoroughly. That's why you see very little vegetation left. I don't know its impact. It looks like in a lot of cases root systems are in place. Again, now I'll encroach on George's territory.
At least 7 or 8 canyons coming.
But the fact that you've denuded these areas, absolutely. This is what our biggest worry is. The hills here that you can see inside the park going all the way back deep into the forest and what's going to come back out of there, because that's all burnt as well. You have ash, which will be the first thing, and ash is very difficult to deal with. Then you're going to get soil, rock, burnt debris, all coming out of that canyon. So, flood control, that's what they're aiming to do, is to keep that within their facilities and in their basin and handle that.
Rain that occurs on the top of the mountain, it may not be visible
Yes.
down here, and that water will be here perhaps before the rain.
Yes, before you see rain. Very good point. I mean, I think Chris can tell you that, and our staff has been back, you can hear water running. When they started to clean that debris channel, and when's the last time it rained? There's mud in that channel. So there's wet debris that's coming into that channel from deep back into the forest where there is running water. Most of these are all blue line streams area. So, I mean, you're right. It could be raining back there. You could have it rain somewhere else that's feeding that particular stream bed and have it come rushing out into the park. But these are all things that flood control and working with the Forest Service is planning for, and USGS.
Here. Down to her.
Yeah, I was wondering, someone mentioned about getting a permit if they're getting something built on their
flood control.
Right. So is the city going to make it very easy to get the permit process going through so people don't get frustrated and
Absolutely.
say, oh, forget it?
Just
checking.
Are you insinuating that it's frustrating?
No, I'm not. I love the city of Glendale. I'm just checking. Like, if there's
We're
specific information so people can get through it very easily.
Yes, we will work closely with flood
A couple
control.
different languages, maybe.
We
All right.
we will do what needs to be done to help them. Yes, sir.
Where will we pick the tour up?
George, tour, the park tour.
It will be right at Duke-Majan Park. So at the parking lot, we'll open Duke-Majan Park for the tour, and it'll be a guided tour.
Meet up at the parking lot then?
And there's a sign-up sheet, I think, outside. Jeff?
Be prepared to park on the street and walk in.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Forest, I saw a hand from the Forest Service again. Maybe one. Yes.
I wanted to respond to the gentleman who asked about the seeding and was the Forest Service concerned. Of course, we're very concerned. We have done an assessment of the entire burned area, and there is indeed probably 73% of the area is in moderate to severe burn. So you see the ash and the vegetation is gone in those areas. However, in those areas, in much of the area, the roots are still alive, and we are already seeing sprouting coming back. So there's already green growth out there. And also some of those plants are adapted to fire so that it requires fire for the seeds to be able to germinate. So with the first rains, we expect to see a lot of germination. Now, the chaparral area will naturally recover. We expect full recovery within 3 to 5 years, which is what our scientists are predicting. So although we will have issues for 3 to 5 years, we do expect for much of this area to recover naturally. It is very, very steep, and so the thought of seeding it, the seed just won't stay on the ground. The soil is raveling as we speak. It's moving. If we put seed on top of that, it's either going to blow away or it's just going to move down the hill. So that's why we're not moving forward with the seeding. So.
Thank you. Good stuff. Just as it reminded me, I had a question Saturday regarding impacts to the wildlife in the park, direct impact to the wildlife. What does that mean for you as folks who live adjacent to the park? If food sources have gone away, I'm by far deers and roses don't match. So yeah, and you're afraid that where deer go, then the predator behind them. But anybody who's interested in that kind of information, we can get that either through the Forest Service or they can direct us to the right place. Yes, ma'am.
There are injured wildlife out there. And that poses a danger to the public because an injured wild animal can react in ways that aren't good. So if you do see any of the injured wildlife coming out, avoid it and call animal services. So beware of injured wildlife.
You had mentioned that Glendale Unified School District is involved in all the preparation. Can you give any details as to what they're planning on doing?
I can at this point, but I can tell you they're an integral part of our emergency response plan regardless of the event. They are in our EOC. We coordinate closely with them in all aspects. They are a member of our internal committee. George talked about the internal task force we have. They're also a member of that. We didn't get the latest information they had. We're hoping to get something this week that we can post on the website. We'll do it on ours. They'll do it on theirs, I'm sure. But again, we're just going to plaster this information all over the place. I don't have any specifics at this point in time. Again, we talked about the air quality. I know that they're very concerned about that, and they've been monitoring that. As far as preparations for potential closures and those kind of things, I don't know what trigger points they're going to use. But we're going to be in touch with them and convey to them the interest of the community to get some more information specific to the schools and their children. Yes.
Back to the Santa Ana winds. You were saying that the ash is not too good for you. What kind of precautions are we supposed to take for that?
Well, generally, a lot like what was happening at the time of the fire with the smoke and the ash then, is try to restrict your outdoor activities and strenuous activities. Try to stay in the house, keep your windows closed, keep your kids inside. Outside of that, sometimes life goes on. You may get a wind blowing. So we're going to put on our websites a couple of different options on protective measures, masks that you may want to wear. We've got a general mask. We had a resident that was very nice enough to give us a connection to a mask that's for folks that have a more sensitive respiratory system, people who have asthma and bronchial issues. It's a more sophisticated mask and one that allows you to function in those kind of situations. But I'll tell you, if at all possible, to keep your activities limited and stay inside. With something that's potentially this caustic, it can get in your eye, it can irritate your eyes and everything. So it's just, take a lot of precautions when those winds kick up. And again, we're going to monitor the Santa Ana winds as closely as we monitor the forthcoming rain.
This year was the first year Glendale in their history has ever did a control burn. One of the reasons is that some of the largest fires in California and U.S. history has been from a controlled burn that has gotten away from firefighters. Controlled burns are something that has to be very precise. It has to be the precise conditions to support that. What was supporting us on this incident was that it was a slow-moving, backing fire, that we had plenty of resources, and it was all in our favor. Also, any building that is lost due to us putting fire to the ground, we just bought. So that is another reason why we have usually let the fire run its course, and then we let the firefighters do their job. This was all in our favor doing it on this incident.
I meant on the Verdugo Hills, come springtime or whatever.
On future burns, I can't say never, but that area over there is even more unique than the one that we just had, with structures all around and within. I don't foresee us laying fire to the ground over there.
What are the likelihood that power lines could be knocked out?
Our water and power department, representatives from both the water and the electric side, along with Crescenta Valley Water District, who is here tonight or was here tonight, are all involved in the task force, all looking at that. This morning when we had our discussion with the electrical administrator, they're in the process now of going through this area, identifying critical they're going to make the assumption that there's a chance they could lose power. So they're trying to identify the critical facilities and put together their response plan in getting the power back on, or whatever temporary measures we may put in place to get power until that repair can be made. So they're in the process of putting their plan together too. And again, as the city manager mentioned to me, when we come back and talk to you, we'll have more specifics, not just about public works or flood control, but also our utility, electric and water as well. One more? Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to talk any further about insurance issues? I called my state farm agent, and he really didn't give me any help on it at all.
Unfortunately, no. Most of what we're hearing is that your conventional homeowners insurance is not going to help you in this situation. Doesn't cover mud and that. A lot of people, I think, are looking to the national flood insurance as an alternative. We've got some information on that. We've got a contact through both the Forest Service CARE that we spoke about earlier. We'll get that on our website. And we also, if in doubt, please notify Congressman Schiff's office. One of his field representatives is aware of the situation and is ready to help you answer those questions. But it's looking like that may be your best alternative, because I don't think traditional homeowners is going to help you in this particular situation. I want to thank you all again for coming out. This is a great turnout, 2 days, and we'll be back to talk to you more.